I first saw Sable back in 2018 when it was announced at E3, not long after I created this channel. My affinity for games with eye-catching art styles was always present, so I followed the game's development ever since with eager anticipation. In terms of my channel, it took around a year of making videos and finding new creators I looked up to before I really started to find out what my style was. I discovered my passion for discussing the aesthetics and atmospheres of games, as opposed to the very formulaic review format that was previously all I knew. I sometimes dive into longer form analysis videos, but my heart is full when I'm talking about art design and feel. As I found myself as a creator, so did other people. I grew with every new viewer and from the support of my peers, as well as a tiny bit of luck with the godforsaken YouTube algorithm. Over time, I built a wonderful audience, and my list of ideas for videos has never filled me with such excitement. The reach of my work stretched further and further, catching the attention of even game developers, something I think will never not feel incredibly flattering. And it got to a point where the creative director of Sable also discovered my videos. Sometime later, I was asked to provide voiceover for some marketing videos explaining the world of Sable. I remember seeing the message and bursting with an equal amount of joy and nerves. It's the first professional voice work I've ever done in the industry. My fascination with the game never wavered since 2018, but had you told me back then that I would be the voice of game trailers, I wouldn't have believed you. I received an early code for Sable around a week before release, and played it almost non-stop, clocking in at around 14 hours playtime only a day later. I finished the main story in that time, and when I saw my name appear in the credits, I cried. I knew I was going to be there, but it hadn't quite hit me until I saw it with my own eyes. It was the most accomplished I've ever felt. The journey of self-discovery that the protagonist Sable experiences over the course of the game felt very close to home. There are choices you must make as the player which allow a closer connection to Sable through the significance of your decisions. And I think it's an adventure that a lot of people can relate to in different ways. Your time with the game will be whatever you want it to be. There's a lot to love about Sable, and I've been dying to talk to you about it. So here it goes. If you're already familiar with the work of the French illustrator and comic artist Moebius, you've probably noticed the striking similarities in Sable's art style. Otherwise known as Jean Giraud, this is the man behind the concept designs of the greatest sci-fi works to exist. His art consists of abstract futuristic subjects formed with clean and intricate line work, a crucial casing for the wash of colours contained within. Imagery of spaceships, deserts, and surreal architecture are most notable throughout his work, never failing to transport me into a rich, believable universe. Moebius displayed a vivid and unlimited imagination, and for many, he is one of the most spectacular artists to ever exist. So if you're a fan of his artwork, there's no doubt you'll revel in the marvellous visuals of Sable. Upon first glance, we see familiar line work wrapped around the solid colours of its subject matter, as well as some recognisable imagery. But one of its most impressive features is the game's day-to-night cycle, which doesn't just darken the landscapes as one might expect. Instead, there are shifting colour palettes that organically transform the world right before your eyes. It's a sight that never loses that sense of amazement, as the dull colours of the night melt into daytime luminosity, and it was always an enticing invitation to contemplate the breathtaking views before me. One of Sable's greatest strengths is architecture, and given creative director Greg Kithriotis' background in the subject, perhaps an unsurprising one. With inspirations including Star Wars, Nausicaa, Piranesi, and the aforementioned Moebius, the harsh deserts of Midden are filled with both natural and man-made wonders. Whether you're in the belly of a derelict spacecraft or a crumbling tower, the detail elevates them into living, breathing structures. While the age of these ruins is never pinpointed exactly, you know that their origins are lost somewhere in some bygone era, and that's all you need to know. I marvelled at the complexity of the innards of spaceships, their impressive geometry highlighted by the emphasis of lines and forms in the art style. There's this essence of futurism mixed with the ancient as you look upon these technological relics that simultaneously sit on different ends of a historical spectrum. Things that are so far buried in the past mixed with a future so currently out of reach. The architecture reminded me of the game worlds of Fumito Ueda, who similarly presents monuments with fantastical immensity. There's a sense of antiquity that begs to be uncovered. And while you can discover fragments of the old, there's plenty left to your imagination. Sable's environmental storytelling feeds off of the mysticism it carries with its awe-inspiring ruins. The deserts are home to a destroyed future rebuilt through the perspective of an ancient civilization. The cultural world-building is abundant with rituals, beliefs, and a way of life bearing nomadic ideas. One such custom is the gliding, a rite of passage for the youth of Midden, a journey which we depart on with Sable and her bike Simoon. At the end of her gliding, you must choose what masks Sable will wear. Acquiring them will mean collecting free badges of a certain type, which involve all kinds of quests. An entertainer's mask will require you to play a game of hide and seek, and a beetle mask will send you to catch worms in a cave. Even as the player, I felt drawn to certain types of masks, making Sable's gliding something I connected with even more. Different clans and groups of people have varying lifestyles depending on the environment. There are cartographers who are suspended high above ground, crystal farmers who are situated next to lightning-struck mountains, and people harvesting salt from shallow pools. Speaking to them will give you further insight into their culture, making Midden feel alive with all kinds of people. As well as humans, you'll come across many kinds of creatures. The bugs were my favourite, as catching some of them means that you'll need to figure out their behaviours in order to get close enough. This will involve scouring the environment around you, perhaps looking for organisms they might be attracted to. Despite the seemingly cruel conditions, there's plenty of biodiversity thriving in the desert. This ecosystem feels organic, with every living thing supporting each other in some way. Customization is another facet of tailoring your experience of the game to fit the identity you wish to project onto Sable. The designs of masks and clothing can be wonderfully wacky or downright cool. They're a perfect blend of sci-fi and nomadic elements, creating a closet of unique pieces to wear that are believable garments in the land of Midden. You are able to change Simoon's appearance to your liking also. You can mix and match numerous bike parts, and change the colours using dyes that you've collected. So far this is all cosmetic, which contributes to the theme of expressing oneself and experimenting with all kinds of looks. However, the parts you choose for Simoon will also affect the way she handles. I tend to value speed and in some cases aesthetic over anything else, so I was happy this was a build I could indulge in. And even though I had my favourite set of parts to use, I still tried out other ones too. Everything felt worth testing even if you know you prefer something else. Sable's strong suit as an open world game is that it truly values freedom. No matter what I saw in the distance, I was never turned away by progression restrictions if I travelled over to it. Every area I came across was in the order I chose, and for other players, their time with the game might look entirely different to mine. The map and quest list is small enough to not be overwhelming, but don't let this fool you into thinking there's very little to do. The world of Sable is contained, but never restricting for the player. Every inch of space feels right, whether it's empty or packed with detail. My 100% achievement playthrough came in at around 20 hours, and I savoured every second of it. I actually recommend going for all of the achievements, because it's one of those rare cases where they reflect a well-rounded and hearty experience of what the game has to offer. There's a sense of extraordinary wonder when you stumble across a place tucked away into the crevices of the desert that cultivates curiosity in a way that few games do. Your progression with the game welcomes your own pacing. You're free to leave any tower or place at any time if you'd rather visit it later. There's a lot of fluidity in your voyage, which also extends to your movement. I mentioned it in my Tranquility of Traversal video, but satisfying traversal is an important factor of open world games of any scale, because if the movement doesn't feel good, then any incentive to venture out to the deepest corners of the map becomes a chore. Thankfully, Sable doesn't have that problem. The motions of your hoverbike Simoon are a joy to ride with, and she will probably remain the most memorable vehicle for me in any game. The sound she makes will change with the parts you use, often letting out a cry when you crash into something. And when you need her, she will answer your call. In the end, Simoon feels like more than just a bike. Sable includes incredibly thoughtful dialogue and writing, and accompanied by everything else I've spoken about, it was only inevitable that I found myself so wrapped up in the game's world. With some of the greatest world building I've ever experienced coupled with a very appropriate soundtrack by Japanese Breakfast, my time with the game felt so spiritual. For me, it feels like I grew alongside Sable's development, discovering who I am and what I enjoy doing. To have been a small part of it is an honour, and it makes me look forward to what the future has in store. Our journeys of self-discovery all look different, bring us to all kinds of places, and take as long as they need to. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.